What's going on, beautiful people? We are back again with another Mental Max Out podcast. I'm your host, Akeem Robinson. And for those of you joining us for the first time, thanks for checking it out. Mental Max Out is all about helping people change their perspectives, think differently, and get out of the hole. If you're back again, I celebrate your willingness to continue growing and challenging your mind. Remember, if you like what you hear today, make sure you hit that subscribe button or whatever platform you're listening from. Share it with a friend and follow us on social media at Mental Max Out Podcast.
What's going on, beautiful people? We're back again. And this time it's a little different because we're in front of a live studio audience. I'm just joking.
He's not. We're back in the living room, man. We've received such great feedback. Everybody says we just sound lighter. And today we're joined by none other. You've heard her name. You may have seen her face. Serena Robinson.
Serena is in the building, and let me tell you, we're going for it.
We're going
for it. Parenting 101.
We're working parents. What are you going to do?
Yeah, working parents on 10, on edge. Serena is like, let me see what's going on. Should I play the game and be calm today or lose it? Stay tuned and find out.
Well, if you hear her in the background right now, y'all, she's just like being a kid, just playing.
Yeah. So we're here. And, that's actually really good in what we're talking about. Because if you tuned in last time, we were talking about relationships.
A little 4-part series getting you ready for the big Valentine's Day.
Yes. One of the biggest scams out there for couples. Buying cards, flowers, everything gets doubled and tripled in price, and we still do it. But yeah, that's it. That's the thing.
Today, we're really going to dive in. Highly recommended. This was asked to us this week, so we thought, why not hit the ground running? We're going to talk about the big, bad B word.
Dum, dum, dum.
Boundaries. I know that's exactly what you thought I was going to say, and I'm going to stop singing. So you don't have to get my beautiful voice. I'm just going to stop singing now, so...
Yes, boundaries, or to some people, rule breakers, or to others, the do's and don'ts of relationships.
So here's the thing, okay? I feel like when you think of the word boundaries, I think about baseball and like t-ball. Boundaries are like, you got to hit the ball within this area. Otherwise, you're out. That's what a boundary is, right? Like, I'm sure by definition, it means like, got to be within this realm, this line, this thing. And I feel like in relationships, we set boundaries in the beginning. Hey, this is what I like and this is what I don't like. It's like your checklist. Hey, don't leave your hair in the sink after you shave. Hey, can you make sure that when you brush your hair in the shower, you don't leave it on the side of the shower? Those are boundaries.
When you're young, you were taught at a really early age to get in a straight line. When you're young, you're taught at a really early age to do certain things and follow certain things. And then guess what? As we progress throughout our lives, we continue to do those same things, following an order. And so not only do we follow an order, we put that same thing into a relationship with somebody we're getting to know, somebody we're getting to cultivate a life with, and we're literally saying, how can we do this? And so I think from the very beginning, we set these boundaries in the beginning because it's what we've been taught. So now that we're talking with someone else, we're saying, hey, here's my list of do's and don'ts. Follow them or else. Here's what I like and prefer. I prefer for you to be this way throughout your life to make this relationship move smoothly.
When you get a new thing, right? Like a new toy or new whatever, you got an instruction manual, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you should read it. I don't know how many people really do read the instruction manual. Setting boundaries in a relationship is your instruction manual.
And not only is it your instruction manual, I think that's a great point too. Sometimes it's assembly required. And I think we forget that because you're dealing with somebody else, assembly is required. That you're going to have to put work in on that nightstand that you bought. You're going to have to put work in assembling this IKEA piece of furniture. I know how it looked, but you and your partner have to spend, hopefully, a lifetime with each other, putting together the furniture the way it should look. But I think we rush to get to that. We say, here's the blueprint, you build it. No, it's here's the blueprint. We should build this together, because guess what? You have a blueprint, but so do they. So they have their own. And instead of you exchanging this document of saying, here's how to treat me and here's how I treat you, it should be, now let's figure out how to treat each other.
I think something that's important to understand is, we've talked a lot on this podcast about how we as people are always changing, and we as people are always growing, and we like different things. We need different things. And so our boundaries change. Not every baseball stadium in the country is the same size. The boundaries are different in every stadium. I think we're no different because we're continuing to grow and change. And so what your expectations were, what the instructions were for you when you were 20 is different than 30 and different than 40 and different than 50. I think that we really have to be intentional, like we talked about last week, about understanding our partner's boundaries, because they're changing, and what they told you in year 1 may not be the case in year 5. But how do you know if you're not being intentional and checking in with them? Bring it back, circle it back to last week. If you haven't listened, go listen now. I think it's so important, because if you're not checking in with your partner to say, hey, does this still work for you? Think about the things that your partner told you in the beginning of the relationship. Are those things still true? Are the things that they prefer, the way they want to live their life, their goals, their hopes, their dreams, what they wanted to do with, as a family, are those still the same as when you first set the boundary? Because if they're not, it's time to set a new boundary.
I think in relationships, when we say boundary, I think what we do is we say, it's me versus you. This is my team and how I run my organization. I'm going to listen to a little bit of how you run your team and organization, but I still prefer you follow my instructions and my rules. But I'm going to be a little honest with you. It's not that. And I truly believe the term boundary gets put into this bad category, because if your partner tells you, I prefer this and that, don't speak to me this way, or I don't like to do that anymore, what happens is sometimes we might take offense to the fact that it's changed. We might take offense to the fact that something is now different. And so in doing that, we're saying, oh, well, that doesn't fit into what I prefer. If you're truly trying to create boundaries, not every baseball stadium has the same yardage around the ballpark, but the games are changing. The scenarios are changing. So you can either be against your partner trying to win, or you can be on the same side playing against life, playing against circumstances. Let me just take a little pause right quick. So right now, Serena is running around glute bridging off of her mom. And let me tell you, mothers, they're freaking superheroes, because I'm sitting here like being held hostage by this 1-year-old, cool as a cucumber. Allison's just like, hey, come over here, do this. And I'm telling you, she is killing it. Moms, significant others that have the patience like that, they are freaking superheroes. But anyways, like I was saying, there's a game of life. And you can either be playing that game of life against your partner, arguing over petty things, finger pointing about who didn't do something or they weren't in the right place, or you can be playing the game of life with your partner, because guess what? Circumstances and situations and life is just going to happen. And some of it you're going to be ready for, and some of it you're not. Preferably for me, I'd rather be with my partner instead of against my partner, because life sometimes sucks if you try to do it by yourself. And so there's just a lot of situations out there when we talk about boundaries. These aren't these hard-pressed rules to say, well, these are mine and these are hers. How can you make those yours as a couple?
In order to be on the same team and be successful, you got to know the rules of the game. I can't be trying to play slow pitch and you're playing fast pitch.
Ain't gonna work.
We're not even baseball people, and this is a lot of baseball analogies. But anyways, like, we really can't be against each other. We want to be on the same team. And so I think it's so important, because if we're constantly looking at those boundaries like restrictions, like, dang, I can't do that, can't do that, can't do that, of course we're going to be discouraged. Of course it's going to have this negative connotation in our mind. But if we look at them as a way to structure how we're going to be able to move efficiently and effectively in our relationship, in life, then it helps us kind of see it in a bigger light, because at the end of the day, you want to be on the same team as your partner. That's why you chose each other. That's why you're together.
Here's how you do it. You look your partner deep in the eyes Serena's now waving hi. So you can start it off by that. You can wave hi to your partner and say, hey. And you can say, what is new that you like to talk about? What's happening in your life that's interesting? Just by asking a question, and I don't mean, who do you think is going to get the rose on The Bachelor? Who do you think going to win the Super Bowl? Because that's the Chiefs. I'm talking about for real, like question that's different than the norm, because you want to see if the boundary has shifted. You said we were giving too many baseball analogies, so let's flip it on you. Think of it like a football field. We know the football field is 100 yards, but do you want to be in a game on one sideline and your partner is on the other sideline?
No.
No, you don't. You want to be on the same side of the field trying to win the game. And so how do you do that? You have to constantly try to put yourself in a position to say, who has the ball? Where are we on the field of life? Where are we heading as a marriage, as a couple, as parents? Because you don't want to be at the tail end and someone's pissed off. You don't want to be in a situation where you're thinking to yourself, well, I told you this, but you've been telling them the wrong things for years, and they've just been putting up with it. And guess what? Now their cup is filled and they're pissed. So you want to be on the same side. By just asking them questions that are different than the norm, you might start getting different conversations to talk about.
You bring up such a great point, babe, because at the end of the day, these boundaries, these conversations, they're meant to improve the support. They're meant to support your relationship, to support your ability to grow together. And the only way that happens is if you look at them as a way to say, hey, how can I help you out? How can I be a better teammate for you? Take it internal and say, it's not about what your partner's telling you you can or can't do. It's about what you together are trying to accomplish.
I think that's something that we've had to work on a lot. You truly need to be understanding, how do I support the other person? How do I understand their boundary and make it a boundary we can both work with together? Because you're always going to be different. You're always going to have a different perspective. When you have a boundary, I'm not trying to say be a yes person or be someone that's completely on board with what they're doing. But you do need to be on board with the conversations that you need to have, because things are constantly changing. Positions are changing. Jobs are changing. Serena's now walking and she's saying, eat. And so that's changing. And so like literally not even a full year ago, she couldn't tell us that. So now she's communicating. How do we do that? What do we give her? When do we give it to her? So things are constantly changing and evolving, and you have to be willing to have those conversations in real time, with the understanding that sometimes it might not be something you want to hear. It might not be something you agree with, but you should feel comfortable and good in knowing that they wanted to bring it to your attention.
I think one of the reasons that we struggle in the area of how has our relationship changed, or how have we changed and grown, and how do we even know it's time to talk about boundaries? If it's not at the forefront of our mind, how do we even know that this is something I should bring up with my partner? Well, when was the last time you talked about it? And what's on your mind? What has been driving you nuts lately about your partner?
Ooh.
Like, what have they been doing that you've subconsciously just been gritting your teeth, saying, it's fine, it's not the end of the world? Because if you're doing that constantly, you probably have a boundary that needs to be addressed that maybe hasn't been addressed in a while.
Ooh.
And I know what you're thinking, right? Okay, what do these you've not been married for 45 years like I have, right?
Just you wait, son.
Yeah, I get it. But if there's something that you're like, I've told him so many times and he just can't seem to get right, well, either one, tell him again, or have a conversation as to why. What's important about that? Why does it matter to you so much? Why are you so frustrated with that? Because you might find that it's a you problem and it's not a him problem.
I don't think they're ready for that.
People struggle to reassess their boundaries because there's too much fluff. There's too much fluff.
Too much.
You're getting home, you're exhausted. It's the end of your work day. Hey, babe, how was your day? Oh, it was good, babe. How was your... Oh, it was good, babe. All right, let's get these kids fed, bathed, in bed, and then let's sit here, scroll on the phone, watch our episode of Scandal. And believe me, we do that all the time. Right now, catching up on The Voice so we can get ready for this next season. It's fine. All that fluff means that we're not talking about some real stuff, right? Did how I leave the house this morning frustrate him in any way, shape, or form? Did something that I said this weekend, is it still kind of like in his mind of like, hey, she kind of was joking, but I didn't really take it as a joke. What have we been doing that is preventing us from having the real gritty conversations? Because of course, on a Monday night football's on, you want to just chill with your family. You do not want to talk about deep stuff. But then Monday turns into Tuesday, and Tuesday turns into Wednesday. And next thing you know, you're weeks, months, and years down the road, and you're like, I don't know why my partner's so frustrated, because you didn't talk about it when it was happening.
Here's the deal. This year, you started off and you wanted to purge everything.
Everything.
And you were like, no room, no corner, nook, or cranny will not be explored and evaluated and maybe donated or thrown away. You said that. And here's the problem with boundaries. People are not taking those boundaries in that same kind of importance. What they're doing is they're saying, hey, how was your day? And if it's not brought up in that situation, they're just moving it to the back of the closet. If it's not being brought up in the middle of the argument and it's not being resolved right then and there, it's just getting moved into the office. It's getting moved to a part of the house that things get forgotten. And that's what I believe boundaries can be sometimes. They're getting moved to different parts of the house that are being forgotten.
It's like that one decor item, that vase you bought 17 years ago. It starts on the mantle. And then you change for the seasons, and then you put it in the guest room. And then you redecorate again, and it goes in the kitchen. Like, that vase is constantly moving until you finally realize, I hate this vase. I should have just brought it to Goodwill. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're just moving it from room to room. That's how resentment happens. Until you're finally like, I'm so fed up with this vase that I really don't like. I'm just going to take it to Goodwill. Relationships are no different. You don't want to develop resentment because all you're doing is moving your stuff from one place to the other.
It has to be dealt with. But the thing is, if it just keeps getting moved and you keep adding on more clothes, more things, and no one takes the time to bring it up, then guess what? Not only is the resentment building, there's a resentment on top of a resentment. And then guess what? Now you're irritable. You don't want to spend time talking about different things. Things are now more difficult to deal with, or just their sheer presence in certain times annoys you because you have built up so many things in certain parts of your mental house that you don't want to deal with it. So how do you purge that stuff? You purge it by starting to explore it. You start to go into those mental areas. Okay, you know what? It really annoys me when you don't do the dishes. Is that something that has been talked about that you both do together? Because if that has not been talked about that you both do together, that might be a you thing. You need to have difficult conversations. Hey, I really like the kitchen to be clean. Can you please help me? Because we have so many other things on our schedule. Okay, that's now different. You're asking for their help compared to saying, you don't do the dishes, it annoys me. No, I need your help because we have a bunch of other things logistically that we have to take care of. We have things that we plan to do today, so can you help me with the kitchen from time to time? That's a whole different approach, and you still get what you're looking for.
It all comes down, in my opinion, to where's your heart and what's your intent. The root word of intentional is intent. Your intent in having these conversations with your partner is not ill will. It's not because you want to poke blame. It shouldn't be because you want to accuse them or start something or whatever. And so how you speak to that person, so important. And it happens with action and your tone. Hey, babe, I don't want this to come off as I'm accusing you. Something's on my heart. Something's on my mind. I really like to talk to you about it. In our relationship, those prefaces are so important to me because it allows me to pull my guard down versus him walking in the room and say, hey, you really haven't been helping with dishes lately. And remember, I need your help. Instantly, I'm defensive. But if he would say, hey, babe, I like to talk to you about something. It's really been on my heart. It's really been on my mind. And then I'm instantly like, oh boy, okay, this is my partner. This is my teammate. I want to make sure that I'm supporting him as best I can. So whatever it is, whether it's, hey, you didn't turn the light off in the bathroom last night, you didn't, whatever, then I want to know because I want my partner to be good. In order to do that, when he comes to me and says, hey, something's on my heart or my mind, I'm instantly more receptive. And I had to learn that about myself because I was not like that in year one. I really had to learn, and we had to learn how to communicate with each other in a way that was non-threatening. We're both very headstrong individuals, and we'll go at it in terms of, having conversations about things and we'll be both really frustrated. But we had to learn, hey, because we're both headstrong, when things are really important to us, we have to really tone it down so the other person doesn't get defensive.
Consistent actions will always bring about consistent behaviors. I'm going to say that again. Consistent actions will always bring about consistent behaviors. If you're constantly critiquing your partner, you're going to constantly receive a defensive behavior. If you're constantly putting down your partner, you're going to receive a constant withdrawal from your partner. Constant actions will always bring about constant behaviors. So if you do want to start to move in a direction where new boundaries are starting to be established, what are your actions saying? Because now you can check your actions and say, just like she said, hey, babe, I'm not trying to point fingers. I'm not trying to come at you from a disrespectful place, but can you please help me with this? Or this has been on my mind. Can we please talk about this? Instead of, you know better than that. You've always done that. You've continued to make this mistake since the beginning, because now guess what you're going to receive? A battle. And that's what you don't want.
It's authentic in the beginning as you're getting to know your partner. Like, it makes sense in the beginning to talk about things and set the stage. When Akeem and I were probably a year into dating, we were driving somewhere and he said something funny and I was like, ha ha ha, oh my gosh, shut up. And he said, don't ever talk to me like that. Just like that. And I was kind of like, oh. And he was like, I don't appreciate that type of banter in my relationship. And that was so new to me, right? Because that's how I talk to my friends. That's how I talk to the players. That's how I talk to my, friends and coworkers and whatever, right? And so it was so new to me, but instantly it elicited a conversation with us about how to speak to each other in a respectful way. Not saying there was no sense of humor, not saying you couldn't, joke around or give each other a hard time, but to him, that was a line that I didn't know existed. And so what that did was, for the next several years, we're really intentional about how we spoke about and to each other with respect. And knowing, hey, I don't view you as, this coworker that I'm casual with. Like, no, this relationship is really, really important. And I hold it in such high regard that's just not who we are. And it was so impactful because I think a lot of times it's intimidating to have conversations because it requires vulnerability. Setting boundaries, whether it's your first time or you're 10, 15 years into your relationship, it requires you to be vulnerable and say, hey, this is not okay with me, or this is something that I need to feel supported. And if you're not willing to go to that place of vulnerability, it can be really confusing and hard for your partner because they're trying to figure it out. But if you already know the answer, you already know what you need, tell them, give them the cheat sheet, give them the why and the how, and say, hey, you don't have to figure me out. I'm going to tell you straight up, this is what it is. And not saying you can't grow and change, but it's so helpful when, we do this all the time as women, right? We're like, I don't feel good today. Something feels off. And your partner's like, oh, what happened? What happened? What can I do? Blah, blah, blah. We're like, I don't know. Something just feels off. You might know deep down what it was, but you're trying to push it to the back of your mind because you're like, I am frustrated with my husband because he didn't get guac at Chipotle last night and it's ruined my whole night. And I know that's why I'm mad, but I also know how ridiculous that is. So I'm just going to push it to the back of my mind. So you go through the day. I don't know why I'm upset. I don't know. And he's constantly trying to figure out why you're upset when you already know the answer. Tell him you didn't get the damn guac, dude. When you know that something doesn't sit right in your stomach, you'll be the first person to report it to HR, but you ain't gonna tell your husband.
Ooh, hey, oh my goodness.
Like, you will report somebody at work so quick if something doesn't sit right with you. But when your partner does something, all of a sudden we're intimidated.
I also think it's a bit of not just intimidation, but I'm just gonna stockpile my pissed offness with you for later, and I'm gonna dump it out,
and I'm gonna use it.
Mm-hmm. And that's the other reason why people are, I can't believe I'm about to say what I'm about to say. People aren't as vulnerable in their relationship because they don't want things to be used against them. Let me ask you this. If that's how you're feeling, who set the precedent for that to be set like that in the first place? That both of you are like holding information in because you don't want the other person to use it against you. That's what you really need to look at. And so honestly, when it comes to setting up boundaries and it comes to being intentional with your partner, are you trying to use what they say against them? Or are you trying to use what they say to continue to cultivate a loving relationship?
Why are people so intimidated by having vulnerable conversations with their partner when their partner is supposed to be that person that you can be the most vulnerable with?
Because we're still human, and rejection, failure, embarrassment still hurts. And even though you're my partner, the one I got down on a knee for and I said I love, I still want to protect me just in case. And that's bad. I'm gonna be honest with you, that's bad. And I can almost put money on it that in every relationship out there, there's a high percentage that everyone will not know every single thing about them or the most embarrassing thing about them because they don't want to go back to that or they don't want to share that. But sometimes it might be necessary if somebody's trying to figure something out. It might be necessary if there's a time frame in your life where you're confused and you're trying to help, but you just don't understand where it's coming from. Because I'm going to help you understand this as well. Sometimes the boundaries that you're trying to create or the boundaries that you have won't make sense until your partner is brought in on it and they can help you understand that. For example, we were having a conversation one day and Allison looked me dead in my eyes and she said, "Oh, you're consequent driven." And I was like, "Oh, what does that mean?" She was like, "Well, because of how you were raised and where you're from, when certain things happen in your life, you react a strong way towards fixing it because you're afraid of the consequences." And I was like, "Oh, wow. No one has ever told me that. No one has ever been close enough to me in that kind of capacity to share that with me." When I was letting her into my life in certain spaces, she understands where I'm coming from and she can give me insight into spaces I've never been before. So when we're talking about how do you create a boundary? What is a boundary? How do you work on the same team? By starting to open up to the other person with difficult conversations, they can have a perspective that can shed light on something you have been struggling with for years. They can open your eyes to something that made no sense to you, but they can break it down in a way where you're like, wow, all because you were vulnerable enough to share with them. Now, by no means am I saying share the deepest, darkest secret you have. No, but what I am saying is start small and continue to let them in because they'll start to let you into some more places and y'all can now start to work together.
Everything is awkward at first, like the farts. It takes consistency. You have to be consistent with it in order for it to work. This is not a one and done thing. Like relationships are about consistency. The only way to maintain your relationship is to constantly, every day, day in, day out, show up and be consistent in that. And so understanding that in order to make boundaries and these tough conversations and vulnerability and all that a part of your relationship in an everyday life, you have to be consistent. You can't say, hey, I listened to this awesome podcast and they talked about boundaries. So, hey, let's talk about it. And then you never talk about it again for 20 years. But we do that. The next best thing, the next fad diet. Oh, yeah, that sounds great. It's going to make us really great. It's going to make us really strong. When in reality, we do it the one time. We feel so good about it, but then we never do it again. You have to be consistent. This is something you have to continue to work out with your partner to make this space safe, to make your partner feel okay being vulnerable with you because it doesn't happen overnight, especially if it's not something that you're accustomed to. If this is all brand new to you, you gotta start slow.
Not only do you have to start slow, you have to start in such a space where there's an abundance of grace. Like you have to have so much grace because you might not like their response or they might not be on board with what you're about to say. And so you have to have a grace with yourself. You have to have grace with your partner. And again, not let that scare you from trying to be consistent in changing that. You have to constantly put things into practice because if you want to get better at it, you have to put yourself in a position where you can recognize what's my level? Am I good at it? Am I okay with it? And then continue to work at getting better. Relationships are no different.
Don't let boundaries be the mitochondria in your relationship.
Oh my gosh.
Because we all learned in science class that mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. But when do we ever need to know that?
Not in my high school. They ain't never teach me that.
Well, for those of you who learned that, please let us know. But the point is, don't take this as being something that, hey, I learned once and I don't ever do it again. Don't say, hey, I'm going to set boundaries with my significant other tonight and then never, ever talk about them again. Continue to work at it. Continue to get better. Continue to show up in your relationship and be intentional about what it is that you want to accomplish with your teammate because you're on the same team.
on the same team.
We love you and we appreciate your patience. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. We hope that you got something out of this, and we hope you tune in next week.
See ya.
Thank you for joining us on this exciting episode of Mental Max Out. We hope today's discussion has empowered you with the insights and tools to overcome the challenges of depression, fear, and doubt. Always remember that you have a support system on this journey, and every step you take is a step forward towards victory. If you found this episode helpful, make sure to subscribe and leave us a review. We greatly appreciate your feedback, as it allows us to continually provide you with the content that is most valuable to you. Stay connected with us on Instagram at Mental Max Out Podcast for a constant source of motivation, helpful advice, and a supportive community. Until the next time, keep pushing forward, and remember, you have the strength within you to max out your potential. Take care and stay strong.